All right, Bryce, well, would you believe it? We are at the 6th and final episode of our 2024 summer series and the 6th and final step of our journey to financial independence. We are talking about what we do when we put it all together and we achieve what we've set out to achieve. We've got FIRE. Financial independence, retire early. That is the goal for so many people listening. And even if it's not about retiring early, the financial independence part, having the choice and being able to design the life you want, is really, I think, why most people invest. So, what are we going to talk about in this episode? We're going to talk about why so many people want to achieve FIRE, and I guess how it can mean different things to different people. Most important question: how do you know when you're there? Let's say we've rolled up all the lessons from the first 5 episodes. We've built the habits. We're boosting our income. We're saving more and we're investing it. How do we know when we've made it?
Great question.
Oh, that's only the second thing we're going to learn. We've got more to go. Then we're going to talk about the different ways to calculate your FIRE number.
Yep.
And then finally, we're going to talk about what to do in different stages of life, i.e., does FIRE factor in children and school fees?
Yeah. That's it. Yes. Can't wait for that bit because that's a question I always have for FIRE people.
Now, we're not on this journey alone. There are thousands of people like you, like us, listening to Get Started Investing and taking similar steps on the journey to financial independence.
Hey Equity Mates, so something I've implemented in my own financial life, well obviously developing better habits around saving and having the ability to save as my income has grown, and trying to have some discipline around that, but also things like utilizing financial instruments that are available in intelligent ways. So I've got a couple of pretty generous credit cards that I get great value from. I try and purchase just about everything on them, and I pay them off monthly, so there's no interest, and reap pretty significant rewards through the year in terms of frequent flyer points and other benefits and things that I can then leverage back into, personal rewards in terms of holidays and that kind of thing. So that's been a big and very useful part of my own personal financial strategy.
Hey Equity Mates. One of the big things that I've implemented kind of across my financial journey that really makes me feel a whole lot better about my finances is just having automated payments for all of my bills. When I was younger, I didn't do that. I kind of trusted that I'd remember and I'd end up paying, late fees and stuff like that. So yeah, the automated payments, it's been a game changer for me.
So, Bryce, let's start with the biggest question, the why FIRE? Like, why is this something that so many people are chasing?
FIRE essentially leads to the ability to live the way you want. That's how people chasing FIRE kind of communicate. They're like, I'm going to hit a level of financial independence where I don't need to rely on anyone to pay me and I can live how I want.
Yeah, look, I think it's all about, people having choice. I think you can really feel quite constrained, I guess, in being forced to work a job that you may not want to work, or, not being able to live the life that you want to live. And as much as it sucks to say, like, money is an enabler. Money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you choice. And often having choice might make you happier. So I think there's the best way that you can set yourself up to have choice is to make the right money decisions when you're young, saving, investing, everything that we've spoken about. And some people want to retire early and, lie on the beach when they're 40 and not work another day in their life. But I don't think that's most people. I think most people want to work a job that they like, with the people they enjoy being around, for a cause that they're passionate about. And I think having choice allows you to do that.
Absolutely.
It allows you to tell a bad boss to get stuffed.
Well, yeah, if you don't want to work there anymore.
Well, yeah.
So how do we know when we're there, Ren? Because as the name suggests, FIRE, financial independence, retire early, you obviously need to, in its truest form, build enough wealth and assets so that you can retire.
Yeah. So the FIRE movement has a rule of 25. And basically what they say is calculate your annual expenses, times it by 25, and that's your FIRE number. That's the number that you need to retire. Now, that is just a new branding on an old rule, because the rule of 25 is just an inversion of a classic financial advisor and financial planning rule, the 4% rule.
Yeah.
And the 4% rule basically says that you can safely withdraw an amount equal to 4% of your retirement savings, I think adjusted for inflation, and you won't run out of money for 30 years. And so that's the rule of 4, or the 4% rule. So I guess before we get into it, because there's some things I want to unpick there, but like to just not jump into it too quickly, I guess if we're thinking about how those apply, if we want to figure out how much money we need to retire, it's what's our annual expenses. You would probably actually know what yours is, excluding mortgage.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, let's call it 50 grand a year.
Call it that, yeah.
And then you times that by 25, and then that's your FIRE number. So 1.25 mil. Simple.
That's it. What I think the challenge there is that it's a moment in time number. And so do people then next year when my expenses go up go, oh, got to increase my FIRE number to 25 times?
Why are your expenses going up next year though?
Inflation. Or I get a mortgage.
No. Well, I think this is the key thing. Like your FIRE number has to factor in, excluding inflation for now, it has to factor in everything. Like you can't
That's what I'm saying. Last year I didn't have a mortgage. My FIRE number would have been X.
Yeah,
but just because I get a mortgage doesn't mean I don't want to achieve FIRE.
No, I think you're maybe being a little bit deliberately, if you know that you're going to get a mortgage, that is part of your annual expenses, even if you don't have it this year, but you know you're going to get it.
No, that's what you're saying. I have to anticipate my annual expenses for the next 30 years.
Yes.
No, that's not how people do it though.
It is, bro. It's not like they're like, oh, I live at home with my parents and I don't pay for food or rent, so I'm going to calculate my FIRE number based on this year.
So you reckon
they're like,
you
what
need
is
to
my
make a
life?
prediction.
What is my life? What is the life I want to look like? What is that going to cost? And then that's their annual expenses number.
Yeah, so you want to say, what is Bryce's life going to look like in 30 years?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Well, I think the thing is, as you
get that so wrong.
Yeah, you do.
You would get that so wrong.
You do. Yeah. And so like this is what retirement planning is though. It's like making your best approximation.
Yeah, but sure. But your retirement planning is done at a little bit of a later stage in life than when most FIRE people are kicking around. 18-year-olds saying they're on their journey to FIRE.
No, yeah. But I guess the thing is like the 18-year-old thinks, all right, what's my expenses going to look like when I'm 50? And they might say I'm going to need 60 grand in annual expenses, and therefore my FIRE number is 1.5 million.
Yeah.
And then they'll start working towards that number,
of course,
and they'll grow up and they'll change and they'll
FIRE.
They'll have but the FIRE number can change as well.
Yeah, I know, absolutely.
Yeah. Being an 18-year-old saying I want to get to $1.5 million is a good place to start.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Okay, it just sounded like you were throwing a lot of shade.
I do throw shade. Yeah.
But we're not locking that 18-year-old into saying you told us 60 grand a year was how much you're going to live off. Don't spend a penny more.
No, I know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you do.
Yeah.
So all right, well, that's one gripe with this FIRE number calculator.
Mm-hmm.
Another one I have is just to be really careful around duration risk. So the 4% rule is the financial planning rule that says you won't run out of money over a 30-year period if you draw down 4% or less of your retirement savings. Key thing I said there, over a 30-year period. It's like the classic retire at 65, die at 95 sort of time frame thinking. if you're chasing fire and you want to retire as early as possible, and we've spoken to people who are trying to retire in their late 30s, and they're trying to save 70% of their income, and they're eating beans and rice all through their 30s because they want to get to their fire number by the time they're 38. That fire number is like that rule of that 4% rule, or you flip it around and make it a rule of 25. That's been back tested on a 30-year period. Whereas your money needs to last a lot more than 30 years. So like the actual safe level of drawdown wouldn't be 4%. It might be like 2%, and that might last you 50 years. And therefore your rule of 25 should actually be a rule of 50.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Yeah. Which is why I reckon it's a lot hard. It is a lot harder than you think to actually
definitely
get this number.
Yeah.
The behavior is the important part here.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about different stages of life as well, kids and all of that.
Don't get me started.
But I think the other challenge when you're calculating your FIRE number, your financial independence number, is it really assumes you've got housing sorted. I think as soon as, like in theory, you could have mortgage repayments as part of your cost, but your FIRE number blows out. Like rough maths, let's say you say $60,000 in annual expenses. That means your FIRE number is 1.5 million. The average mortgage in Sydney is about $5,000 a month, and so that's $60,000 a year. So all of a sudden your FIRE number doubles, $120,000 times 25, 3 million FIRE number. Like that becomes a lot less achievable.
Well, particularly if you're also paying the mortgage to get there.
Yeah.
The key here is you want to be building. The key here is you want to be building assets that are going to liquid assets that you can draw down on and be paid.
Yeah.
If you're saying my life when I'm 50 looks like this, and this is how much I need, sweet, I'm going to do this. If you then also assume between now and 50 you're going to buy a house and pay it off, you're going to need serious amounts of free cash flow to build wealth outside of your house to then fund that life stage. Yeah.
So I think with some clear caveats, the calculating a FIRE number is a good approximation. It's a good starting point with the 3 key caveats. The first one that you were talking about, Bryce, around it's really hard to predict your future expenses and what you're going to want and what you're going to need. Secondly, that you've got to think about duration, that this rule has really been built off a 30-year retirement, and a lot of people are thinking about a lot longer than that. And then thirdly, thinking about housing, and this is really about having this FIRE number X your housing wealth. So it's not good enough to say I've got a $1.5 million house that is mortgage free because it's not liquid.
Yeah.
So it's about having like the 1.5 million outside of the house that you've paid off, which makes it a lot more daunting.
Yeah.
So with those clear caveats in mind, it's a pretty good approximation. What's your FIRE number?
I don't have a FIRE number, Ren. I think it's dangerous.
You think it's dangerous?
Yeah.
For any more reasons than we've just spoken about, or? I think you said it earlier in one of the episodes. It's just like building the habits of the millionaire next door and just generally aiming for a financially secure stage of life is going to get you there. I think having a number puts so much unnecessary pressure, mental pressure on you. It's like it will dictate then, or I believe it will dictate then how you actually enjoy your life between now and you hitting that number. Going on this holiday is going to, I know people who do this. Going on my holiday is going to extend me hitting my number by 6 months, and I don't want to do that. Yeah. Or this is coming out of my FIRE number, and it is fine if that's how you want to live your life. More than fine, but there's a lot of time between now and when you're 50, and so I think, and I just personally don't want that
I don't want that stress, like, or sort of like unnecessary burden and commitment to yourself that you're going to hit your number, and if you don't, you're not financially independent.
Yeah.
You'd probably hit financial independence well before then. So anyway, I'm not shitting on it, but I think this whole series has been leading to like the journey to financial freedom, and it's not about. The conclusion is not you need a number. The conclusion is the behavior that we've spoken about throughout this, and getting in early and just getting good habits.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm just thinking about if every spending decision you thought about as a trade-off in terms of length of time you had to keep working, like, if I buy this car, that's going to be another 2 years of work. Or
you.
like, if I pay for it, if I go to this wedding, this out of city wedding, it's going to be another 6 weeks of work, and then you're at the weekend away or at the wedding or whatever, and all you're thinking about is like, is this worth an extra 6 weeks of work? Like, all of a sudden everything is a explicit trade-off in your mind.
Or like, oh damn it, we had a kid. My fire number's
14
extended.
more years of work.
My fire number's extended. Damn it! It's like, do you really want that? Like,
yeah, true.
So, I can't remember what the question was there, but
it was, do you have a fire number?
Oh yeah, so no.
Yeah.
No, but I have an ambition and an objective to get to the same outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
There's no marker on the wall for me. I have larger sort of things, which is I want to build, the house and those sorts of things. Yeah. So, do you?
Yeah, directionally. So, in the book we wrote about Don't Stress, Just Invest, wherever good books are sold. We wrote about some of the numbers that the retirement organizations put up on the wall and say, this is the amount of money you need for a comfortable retirement if you're in Australia, if you're in America, if you're single, if you're a couple, whatever. And for me, like, the number in my mind is get to 1 million, you're going to be in a good place. And then it's like, we were speaking here about some people's fire number being 1.5 million, or maybe you need more, or some retirement organizations think it's a lot less. But obviously it'll grow as inflation grows and all of that. And like, for me, there's so much uncertainty about how I'll be living, where I'll be living, all of that stuff. And so I think, a lot of your points around fire numbers being dangerous for that reason, like I agree with in principle. But for me, it's like directionally, I want to get to 1 million.
Outside of super?
Sure.
Well, I guess because...
I honestly don't really factor super in as an asset.
Because the reason I say that is because, like, we are fortunate to have had super from day one when we're eligible. Our parents not so. Like, we will have that in our super anyway.
Every Australian
hands down
that works throughout their career will have $1 million by the time they retire. So if people think I'm out of touch by saying 1 million, it's like, speak to me in 40 years. But yeah, I don't have a number that I'm desperately going towards. And I also don't have it's not for me a trigger point. It's not like get to the number, tell my boss to fuck off, which would be tough because we work for ourselves. And then, go sit on a beach. It's just like, that would be a nice number to have.
Hey, equity mates. The big one for me is, so I grew up in the outer suburbs and so much time and so much money was spent on commuting, public transport, petrol, parking, all that sort of stuff. But you save so much. I ride my bike or I walk everywhere I need to go, basically. So that's thousands of dollars a year in terms of parking and in terms of that sort of thing. Shopping habits as well, like we go to Cheaper by Miles, which is it's a chain that sells products that are sort of near the use by date or excess stock at heavily reduced prices. So we'll go there first, and then anything we can't get there, we'll go to a regular supermarket.
Hey, equity mates. The biggest shift has been that when I was first out in the world, I just really wanted everything to be cheap and free, and it sort of had to be because my income was so low, but I would try and do everything myself the long way rather than the way that made sense in terms of the rest of my well-being. And so now I think when I can afford it, if I can afford to pay someone for their expertise, I would much sooner do that. So if I need to fix my shower and I also have a million other priorities in the week, I would try and pay them and spend like 6 hours watching a YouTube video trying to learn.
Hey, equity mates. For me, not spending every week on disposables or things that I'll be throwing out within a year, but trying to look for long-term quality in items and saving for them. And big purchases, but rarely.
Welcome back to our Get Started Investing Summer Series. Over the past 6 episodes, we have been taking a journey to financial independence. And in this 6th and final episode, we've been talking about a lot of people's ultimate objective when it comes to financial independence, which is retiring early. That is the acronym Financial Independence Retire Early, or FIRE, you might see. And we're talking about, Bryce has told us why he thinks it's a dangerous movement before the break. So we're living dangerously in this episode. But, we've spoken about how some people calculate what that number is, that financial independence number, and some of the caveats are around that. But I think what financial independence can be and what it looks like can be quite different for different people. And there are probably some sort of key buckets that the FIRE movement talk about. So I think the classic FIRE is just
Beans and rice.
well, yeah, less about how you get there, because I think that this whole series we've spoken about how you get there. It's more like what you do once you're there. And the classic FIRE is you quit your job and you're retired. You do what retirees do. You sit on a beach. You drive around in a caravan. What else do retirees do? Golf.
Bowls.
That actually sounds really nice. Drink. So that's a classic FIRE. I think another FIRE that maybe will resonate with people a bit more is labeled barista FIRE.
Okay. What's barista FIRE?
So it's for people who want to save more and build up that financial independence so that they can work less in later life. The goal isn't to completely retire at an early age. People want to work at less demanding jobs, perhaps part-time jobs. Whoever labeled it barista FIRE, I don't think has done a lot of work in cafes.
Yes.
Because I can say, as someone who did hospitality when they were at uni, it's certainly not less demanding or the stress-free, relaxing job that this person might think. But this is if people want to work in the not-for-profit sector or just jobs that maybe don't pay as much, but want to support the lifestyle that they want. Yeah. They pursue this form of call it barista FIRE, where they work really hard and they build good money habits and they build a nest egg, so then they can draw that down slowly while still working a job that pays less, or they're working a job but they don't work full time.
Barista FIRE, nice. So the next one is Coast FIRE, and this is where you have enough invested or saved that even without additional contributions, your portfolio will grow to support you in retirement. And then these people typically still work, but really only to cover their current living expenses, and then use their savings to coast into retirement.
And so if you think about that, once when we're working, we're putting money away every paycheck into our investment account. But once we stop putting money away, in theory, over the long term, it'll still grow at 8% a year. And so if your FIRE number's 1.5 million, if you get to sort of 1.2,
grow into it.
All of a sudden you can just coast. You can get that compounding effect, and then all of a sudden, all that extra money, all the extra hours you were working to put money away as investing, is all of a sudden your free time. Yeah. Golf, Coast FIRE, how good. Yeah. And then the final one, Ren, Fat FIRE. This is where you want to ensure that you can afford the finer things in retirement. Now, Fat FIRE might be for you if... I think Fat FIRE is for you. Sure, I'll take that. It involves earning as much as possible and saving as much as possible so that you don't have to live frugally in retirement. Who wants to live frugally in retirement? Yeah. I didn't mean that as an insult. I just mean that you seem to rail against the... this is my bucket. Yeah. Yeah. Which is somewhat an interesting personality trait, because on one hand, you're quite meticulous in your budgeting and cost controls. But then on the other hand, do you really enjoy the finer things in life and don't like the idea of like a beans and rice existence or anything? So it's
Do
like,
you like the idea of beans and rice
no, but
existence?
you wouldn't call me meticulous and particularly cost focused.
No, but I guess it's they work together.
Yeah, I guess the way you square that circle is you control your costs where they can be controlled so you can afford the finer things that you want to enjoy.
Yeah, or not. Yeah, exactly. Not have to live frugally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
no, you still do live frugally because
Sorry,
you still make Ham
to
take things out of the
build
shopping
wealth.
basket
Not true.
because you're going over your shopping
Not
budget.
true. Anyway. So those are the buckets for fire. Now, it's important to consider life stages because, as we said at the top of the show, if you are in the fire movement and you're chasing down a number, your life is going to change between that number arriving.
Yeah.
And you're going to need to factor it in. Well, you should be factoring it in or trying to as you progress. Have kids, school fees. Like all of these things are going to take away from your ability to try and get to that number as fast as possible. So factoring those in, I don't know how you do it, is important.
Well, I think it's unfair to say that everyone who supports the fire movement just hasn't thought about, oh, kids are expensive. Like they obviously know that that is a big cost and that's coming.
But how do you factor that? What would you put?
Well, I think for a lot of people, what it would be is like the reason that I'm being so frugal before I have kids is because that's the time where you can really give yourself a head start, and then you can perhaps coast. You can massively you sort of map it out on your fire calculator or whatever. You massively reduce the amount that you're investing, saving and investing when you've got expenses like kids, and then but the foundation that you've built should hold you in good stead. Yeah,
It'll just extend it.
Well, yeah, of course it will extend it. Yeah. And, you know, like I'm sure there are fire people that that would make decisions around how many kids they want to have based on...
Definitely, yeah.
But I mean, like when we were researching for this episode, when I was Googling like fire with kids, there are a lot of fire blogs out there
I'm
that
sure
are
there
like...
would be. How to
that-
do it with kids.
Doing it with kids and like...
yeah.
They are very big advocates for, you know, like we're teaching our kids good money habits
absolutely,
and stuff like
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's quite similar to your upbringing.
Maybe
Potentially.
I mean,
Maybe they're sending their kids out to sell pebbles on the street, but rather than the kid pocketing that money, they put that in an investment account.
yes. Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it all boils down to the same thing, which is fundamentally the habits that this drives are all good.
So I've just realized that the pebble story was in the last episode.
Yes.
So if people have just joined us for this episode, that will make no sense.
Well, go back to episode 5 and have a listen.
But sorry, you're right. The habits.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
the habits here. Whatever number you have, or if you don't have a number, or you're just loosely aiming to get to a point where you feel like you can financially rely on your own assets rather than a paycheck from your job. Like the whole point of this series is about the journey to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, how we should probably close out this whole thing is a reminder that, you know, you don't have to bucket yourself into one of these fire buckets. You don't have to sit down and do the maths and find a number. If all you're trying to do now is find the brokerage platform or sort your budget out or whatever it may be, those are the appropriate steps to take to get to a level of financial independence.
The journey to financial independence doesn't end in the same destination, but it all begins with the same few steps.
Yes.
Saving more than you're spending, taking those savings and putting them to work, investing, giving yourself time, and we mean decades of time, to continue putting money away and letting that investment grow. And that's about it.
That's it.
Oh,
And
so-
wait and wait.
As I was saying it, I was trying to think what else do I need to say here, but
That's it.
that's it.
That's it. Think about diversified options that we've spoken about, low cost indexes, apps that allow you to get in for low dollar amounts, and you're well on your way.
And then as you go on this journey to financial independence, the best thing you can do to accelerate that journey isn't finding crazy exotic investment opportunities. It's just finding ways to save more and then finding ways to put more of that into the market. Done.
Right.
Next question. See you in 2025. Yeah, I think in terms of then what you should invest in, well, that's what we've got the rest of the year on this podcast to talk about.
Nice.